It was an error by the operator, and I guess I'm the operator here.
Peter B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Friday, November 10th, 2017. And as usual on Friday, we're live on Facebook video as we record the podcast at the secret studio just down the road from San Quentin here in Marin County, California. So we've got a lot to report on today, and I invite your phone calls as usual. You can call in at any moment and talk to me about the issues that we're discussing on the podcast today. The number to use is 415-455-0102. And when I wrap up the podcast in an hour or so, I'll be posting this on my website and all my outlet channels. And we will also be posting shortly thereafter our hour-long in-depth interview with Bill Binney. And Bill Binney has been in the news quite a bit this week, and the subject of smears and yellow journalism. And I find it really, really sad that our corporate media outlets are so invested in the unproven Trump-Russia narrative, and in particular, that Russian agents hacked into the DNC computers, gave that information to WikiLeaks with the intention of tilting the election in favor of Trump. And as you know, I've been skeptical of this largely because I've done 4, maybe 6 interviews with Bill Binney since last August. He's been entirely honest. He has shared with us his knowledge of the systems of the NSA that would have been able to detect the hacking if it had actually occurred. Here's the first of 2 excerpts from my brand new interview with Bill Binney. And here he makes the second of 2 points. He went to see Mike Pompeo, Trump's CIA director, at Langley during the last week of October. He was invited there to discuss his theorem that it was a leak, not a hack. And there are technical issues that he has raised. We've covered those before. But in simple terms, the rate of transfer, the speed that the files were transferred at, was just too fast to have been any kind of a hack involving the Internet. The other issue is that if there had been a hack, the NSA, which Bill Binney headed the technical services of, he was technical director, they are able to trace at least a portion of the packets that would have been involved in this large data transfer. Take a listen to Bill Binney here on clip number 1.
NSA has so many traceroute programs on the network, hundreds and hundreds of them, all around the world, and they've got all the collection in the world, especially in the United States. They have over 100 tapping points in the United States where they're capturing everything off the fiber lines and storing it in places like Utah or San Antonio or NSA over here or various other places. And, you know, if anything was going across the network, they could, I mean, it's like, could you miss a pig passing through a python? No, it's a big bulge in the middle. You know, that's the kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And all they need is a couple of packets. They don't need the whole thing, because buried in every packet is the originating and ending, ultimate ending points of the transmission.
Right.
That's the only way the machines know how to get the packets to one place to another in the network.
So he also addressed an issue that some wonks or geeks had raised, which is that the timestamps could be fudged with. But he said that timestamps are inserted not just at the beginning and end of a transfer, but at every stop along the way where the NSA has its access. It's able to just dive right in there and get it. So I believe that Bill Binney has offered not just a theory, but as he corrected me, a theorem. And if you go back to high school or college, a theorem is a theory that has some proof, some evidence. And Binney has offered his evidence publicly. He offered it to the CIA director. And he is willing to subject it to peer review. But the other side of this, the promoters of the Trump-Russia narrative, the people who explicitly say that they know that Russia hacked the DNC and gave that data to WikiLeaks, They haven't provided any public evidence. It's based on innuendo, on anonymous leaks, and on evidence that is claimed to exist, but we have not been permitted to see. So, with that, a true journalist would say, aha, the consensus view is this, but there is a very interesting dissenting point of view. Let's examine it. Let's put it alongside the consensus theory. Let's poke holes in either side and see which one is more compelling, more credible, more persuasive. But if you've been watching Rachel Maddow, if you've read this article in The Intercept, that is a disgrace to the byline of James Risen, who used to work for the New York Times, who helped out the NSA's domestic surveillance programs with the help of Bill Binney and other whistleblowers. Well, he put his name on a slimy, biased piece of reporting. I won't call it journalism. And he was echoed by Rachel Maddow. And so I put together, this was not edited. I played a clip from Rachel Maddow's Wednesday night broadcast on November the 8th for Bill Binney and got his direct response, his direct reply to the twisted, distorted commentary that Rachel Maddow offered her viewers on Wednesday night.
This is a man named William Binney. He used to work for the National Security Agency back in the day. He left that job 17 years ago. He's kept very busy, though. Here he is on Russian state-sponsored TV, RT. This is him less than a year ago, explicating his theory that the whole idea that Russia hacked anybody's emails as part of the 2016 election, he expounds the theory that that is a hoax. He says the hack of the Democratic National Committee was actually an inside job. The DNC hacked itself to make itself lose.
Now, Bill, let's just ask you to respond to this. She's dripping with sarcasm there, but
sure.
Have you ever...
That's Rachel for you.
Have you ever alleged that the DNC hacked itself?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, the only thing I said is that it was done locally.
Yeah.
And that it was done, I did mention that Cy Hirsch had said it was done by an inside person.
Right.
It's Rich. Rich.
It's Seth Rich. Yeah.
Seth Rich. I got it. Sounded like a guy with two first names.
Right.
At any rate, the whole point was that was something else that somebody else had said. I have no direct evidence of any of that. The only thing I have evidence of is the download of data on the 5th of July of 2016, which had to be local, couldn't go across the web. We tried it, and it didn't work, and we couldn't achieve speeds anywhere necessary because, there's a lot of housekeeping data that goes with all that. So if you're going to take 16 gigabits of data, you're going to add another 10 gigabits or something like the house data, and that gets it it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So, and that was our experience. We just couldn't get there with that data across the Atlantic. And it was from, we've documented and published that. So if someone says they can do it, okay, go do it. And then show us where you did it and what time, all the time, and how much data you transferred, what was the rate,
Yeah, and let's peer review it. What do you say?
Yeah. I mean, I'm open for any evidence that anybody can produce. But so far, nobody's produced anything. That's the problem.
That is the problem. That's the voice of Bill Binney. Our lengthy, in-depth interview is well worth listening to. I'm releasing it to my subscribers today at peterbcollins.com. And in the conversation, Bill Binney describes the way he has been smeared by so many outlets, including Mother Jones, the Washington Post. I've seen the very little coverage about this. I think the New York Times is ignoring it. And on television, I asked Bill Binney if he's ever been invited on MSNBC on the Rachel Maddow show. The answer was no. He's never been invited on 60 Minutes. And this is, I believe, a stunning alternative to the groupthink that is being promoted and foisted on the American public. And George Maschke, I see your comment on Facebook. He says the Intercept article on Binney is troubling. And you heard Rachel Maddow in that clip give the first of 3 guilt by association smears that she used on Binney, saying that he had appeared on RT, state-sponsored television. Well, I have to say that the way Rachel Maddow embraces the intelligence community's assessments, which are not conclusions, are not considered fact, and ignores the lengthy history, and Binney and I discussed that in the interview, the lengthy history of the intelligence community lying to the American people. And she prefers to put her faith and to lead her viewers into complete faith in proven perjurers like James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence. And her smears on RT have led the Justice Department to order RT to register as a foreign agent. Now, this is highly unusual. CNN's bureau in Moscow does not, so far, have to register as a foreign agent. The very powerful Israeli lobby, AIPAC, does not have to register as a foreign agent. The similarly designed Turkish lobby does not have to register as a foreign agent. So far, Al Jazeera hasn't been required to register as a foreign agent. The BBC isn't required. That is a state-run media entity, the BBC is. So in Russia, they are taking up dialogue to consider retaliating against the United States, tit for tat. And the head of RT, Margarita Simonian, said today that the channel will comply with the U.S. demands, will register as a foreign agent, and they have to do it by Monday. And she tweeted snarkily, "Can you smell the scent of freedom?" Meanwhile, Donna Brazile, who roiled the Democratic Party with last week's excerpt from her new book, and now a book tour that's including many interviews. She stopped in San Francisco last night. She'll be in L.A. for the Bill Maher show tonight, and I expect that Bill will not press her. Bill doesn't want to believe that the primaries were rigged, that the DNC tilted in favor of Hillary over Bernie Sanders. And it's sad to see that Brazile and one of her seconds, Elizabeth Warren, the senator, who really identifies with Bernie Sanders' politics but refused to endorse him last year, probably out of her fear of retaliation by the Clintons. And initially, when asked if she thought the primaries were rigged against Bernie, Senator Warren unequivocally said yes. But now the word rigged has been ordered out of the lexicon, and we're hearing both Elizabeth Warren and Donna Brazile walk back that comment. But I have to say, that doesn't really change my perception. Donna Brazile showed the contract that showed how the Clinton campaign took over the DNC in August of 2015. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the willing tool to do everything possible internally, including allowing the massive transfer of these big donor funds that were essentially laundered. And, I believe it's a violation of campaign finance law. But I think it's interesting that Donna Brazile called her book Hacks. Now, she believes in the narrative that Russia hacked the DNC. They corrupted our data. They got into our voter files. They use active measures to disrupt our campaign and discredit our nominee. The Russians are coming back. This book is a warning. I don't want no bears in my house. This is some super-duper hacking. But my interpretation of her book title is that she's describing all of the people who populate the Democratic National Committee, including the superdelegates who helped rig the whole process for Hillary Clinton. They are indeed hacks. Political hacks. And I'm glad to see that Donna Brazile had her moment of honesty, and that's what I'm going to stick with, because I believe that the spin that she has offered since is under duress from the same hacks that I just described. Bob Perry's done it again. Over at Consortium News, this great independent reporter dug into the UN's report on the April 4th incident in Khan Shaykhun, Syria, that has been played out as a Syrian sarin gas attack on the population of this town. But when you read the report carefully and you go to Annex 2, that's the appendix, you learn that more than 100 of the alleged victims of exposure to sarin gas, that's what we were told, were taken to several area hospitals before the Syrian warplane could have struck the town of Khan Shaykhun. Now, this is highly inconvenient because, of course, the Trump administration only took 2 days before it launched this highly publicized missile strike against Syria. And once again, the consensus is that Syria did this. We're all just supposed to believe it. But as Perry argues, and I've linked to his important report in the show file for today's podcast, the evidence included in this report conflicts with the timeline that was used to pin this on Syria. It's well worth reading, and I hope you will take a glance at it. My lines are open, and, the reason I do this Friday show live on Facebook is because I want your phone calls. I spent years in AM talk radio. Well, actually, some of it was on FM in Chicago way back there. But I love it when people call in, share their comments and their views, agree or disagree, abuse the host. I can handle it. All I need is your call at 415-455-0102. I'll hold that up a little higher. 415-455-0102. I'm the operator standing by, and I'll be happy to take your call. All you got to do is pick up the phone and give me a buzz. Well, this is not a surprise, really, but The Guardian from London today is reporting that its inside sources in the Robert Mueller special counsel operation have indicated that the next indictment will be for Mike Flynn, the discredited general who once ran the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was tapped to become the national security advisor in the Trump administration. And while he was tripped up for contacts with the Russians, including the Russian ambassador, the more serious issue is that he was paid over $500,000 by an ally of Turkey, and he hatched a scheme to kidnap the legal U.S. resident. He's a murky figure, Fethullah Gulen, this Turkish imam who sits on billions of dollars, lives on an estate in Pennsylvania, runs charter schools across the United States. Well, Mike Flynn attended a meeting, we're told, by former CIA Director James Woolsey, where the discussion was kidnapping Fethullah Gulen and delivering him to a prison island off Turkey. The Wall Street Journal reported on that. And today they report a second meeting involving both Mike Flynn and his son, Mike Flynn Jr., at the 21 Club restaurant in New York, a place that is one of Trump's favorites, in mid-December. According to people familiar with the investigation, it was at this encounter that a $15 million payment for the head of Fethullah Gulen was discussed. Now, my former friend Sibel Edmonds, who I lost respect for over her coverage of Turkey, and it's the reason I led the startup Newsbud left the startup news operation Newsbud last year. She has been publishing videos and articles claiming that all this is unfair to Mike Flynn and everything he did was fair and above board. And I'm sorry, I simply do not buy that argument. Again, Mike Flynn's transgressions have nothing to do with the claims that Russia meddled in our election. And, we had a caller there, but he or she dropped. These are separate issues about their personal corruption. Same with Manafort. So far, Manafort has not been tied to any meddling by Russia in the U.S. election. But that's the way it is played in the headlines. When you read a full article, they tell you the truth. So I think that this will be an interesting development. And again, watch the corporate media as they play it and make it seem like Flynn's indictment is related to the alleged Russian involvement in our election. I'd like to hear from you, 415-455-0102. Somebody had the courage to call but didn't hang on the line. When you call, I'll pick up your line. And like right now, I'm not in the middle of a story, so we'll just see who this is and chat with you right now. Good afternoon. You're on the Peter B. Collins podcast.
Hey, Peter B., it's Alex Marin from Arizona Stand.
Alex, what a surprise. Nice to hear from you.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you for your continual truth-telling, one of a handful of people that are doing so. And there's so many things going on to talk about. I just wanted to express what I think a lot of people like me are expressing is there are just a few people I can count on my hand that still have integrity, that don't buy into the narratives that we're getting. Most of the people that call themselves Dems and Libs are still holding fast to the Russian narrative. They have not wavered at all and have completely disassociated from me, have been hostile to me, and so I find myself pretty much in the minority along with you and a lot of the people that listen to you.
And Alex,
it's
Alex,
just a strange place to be after all this, you know?
Yeah, and what really bothers me is the demands for conformity. There's so many people on the left, particularly the Clinton loyalists, who simply believe this as a matter of faith, and anyone who doesn't agree with them is evil, a tool of Russia, they're idiots. The forced conformity on the left, to me, mirrors the attempt to force people to stand for the national anthem at NFL games. It's this demand that we all must do the same thing. And I thought that's what our freedoms and our liberty are all about.
Yeah, I just got a comment from someone who is pretty much a liberal-minded person and believes in a lot of the things I believe in, telling me I posted an article about the cult of Hillary and how she, different things about her and the DNC and their attitude about women of color and other things. And she castigated me saying, I had to stand for her and I should have done so because she was a woman and all the things that women have gone through. And I told her, we can't have that attitude. This is why we're in the position we're in now. We must have integrity, and no matter, I will not vote for a male or a female that does not connect to my morals and the things that I believe in. And she was vehement. And this is someone who's intelligent, someone who's otherwise believes in the same things I do, but there's something about this mass of people that just does not allow them to break free.
Yeah. No, the groupthink is breathtaking, and to see it used to unify people around a questionable narrative that risks a nuclear exchange with Russia in the extreme is just amazing, because these are the same people who were so opposed to George W. Bush's wars and who went silent when they were Barack Obama's wars. But now they seem to be eager for a military confrontation with Russia over these allegations of hacking. And, of course, we never admit all of the hacking that we do, and that 80% of the NSA's budget now is devoted to aggressive cyber warfare of the, we're on offense. It's not defense. It's not protecting your credit files, obviously. So
they're part of the problem. They should be thrown in with everybody else who they claim is part of the problem, but they should jump in too.
Yeah. All right, Alex, thank you for your comment. I really appreciate it. Good to hear from you in Arizona today.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. That leaves a line open, and somebody was trying to call while I was talking to Alex. Oh, here we go. Good afternoon. You're on the Peter B. Collins podcast.
Hi, Peter.
Hi. Please turn your computer down so it doesn't confuse you.
Okay, I've muted it.
Thank you. Who's this, please?
This is George Maschke in The Hague.
Oh, great, George. Thanks for calling in. It must be late for you.
Yeah, it is. It's 11:26 p.m.
Well, George, what's on your mind today? I saw a couple of your comments posted on Facebook.
Well, what's on my mind is the controversy about Bill Binney's assessment of the DNC hacks, and the claim that, the assessment that it couldn't have been done remotely because of the speed of transfer of the files.
Right.
And, well, a question that concerned me is that, perhaps it might be hard to hack files remotely with such speed, but what if the hackers had just, downloaded the files to their own servers and then copied them very quickly to a USB stick or to another directory and then uploaded them from that, which I think would not be such an unusual scenario, well, then you might see the very high speed of transfer that you might also see if it had been done by someone connecting directly to the servers.
Well,
so I think there's some ambiguity there.
I understand, and here's the point: in backing Bill Binney's theories, or theorem as he prefers to call it, I believe that it should be fully explored. It's not that I take it as the Holy Grail and that this is the slam dunk evidence that we needed to show that this is the truth and that the Russian hacking claim is false. So what I want is a robust, objective investigation. I don't know that it's going to come from the CIA under Mike Pompeo. But at some point, I really believe that we need an honest look at this stuff. And given that there is no public evidence to support the mainstream media-endorsed narrative that Russia did this, and they know it. I mean, this is the other thing, is that Binney offers it as a theorem, and it challenges this conventional wisdom. And as I've argued for so long now, this started out as reports. It's alleged, right? Well, when you look at how CrowdStrike was called in, and I quibbled with my friend Jason Leopold, and I've invited him on the show. I read his
article, too.
Yeah, I've invited Jason on the show to talk about it. He did an interesting profile of this guy Johnston, who was assigned...
I think it was a puff piece.
Oh, I agree. It didn't raise any of the issues. In fact, I would love to have heard Jason Leopold ask Johnston, hey, what about this guy Bill Binney? What about his theorem that this couldn't have happened the way you say it has? He didn't challenge the CrowdStrike findings in any way. He didn't examine the origins of CrowdStrike, that there are two former FBI cyber people in the top echelons, that, I'm blocking on the name, but there's one of the co-founders is a member of the Atlantic Council and is Russian-born. I don't say that is conclusive, but the way that CrowdStrike was used as a substitute for the FBI in the review of the DNC servers is highly suspect. And Jason Leopold, who's done a great deal of work challenging official narratives, really, put down his skills in that respect for the benefit of getting this scoop of being the first reporter to talk to this guy Johnston.
Yeah, I don't disrespect Jason Leopold either, but I think an obvious question that he evidently failed to ask then, and that I would have liked to have seen asked, and maybe you can bring it up with Jason if you speak with him, is, how does Johnston know for sure that it was the Russians that were behind this hacking of the DNC servers? Well,
he cites APT-29 and APT-28. Fortunately, he didn't give us Fancy Bear and Grizzly Bear and those other bears.
Right. But how does he know for sure that only the Russians have access to those hacking tools?
Well, that was not addressed in the Leopold article at BuzzFeed, and I would like to hear Johnston talk about that, because what Bill Binney says, and you'll hear it in the in-depth interview when I release it later today, George, he says, look, this was basically a case where the whitewash was applied from the beginning, and we're not allowed to ask these difficult questions. And, we haven't seen any Senate or House investigation where they bring the CrowdStrike people in to testify. So this is an entirely faith-based operation. And I think that there's a lot of investigation that should be done related to CrowdStrike. One of the very oddball things that Leopold reports is that when the DNC found out they'd been hacked, they just called the new client desk at CrowdStrike. Now, I find that far-fetched because Google is a deep investor in CrowdStrike. Google and John Schmidt in particular Is it John? It's not. Anyway, Schmidt.
The CEO of Google.
Yeah. They're very tight with the Clinton campaign and with the Hillary Clinton herself. And so there are many of these things that just were not explored in the article that Leopold wrote, and I found it very disappointing.
Yeah, I hope he might do a follow-up interview with Johnson and ask questions like, how do you know for sure that it was the Russians who were behind this hack?
Mm-hmm.
What's the forensic evidence that the hacking tools that are associated with the hack are solely controlled by Russia?
Yeah. Because and Binney mentions this in the interview, that the release of Vault 7 shows that those hacking tools had been in circulation for at least a year and a half. So they were available. And George, I'm not serious about this, but let's just imagine that you were actually the hacker. Well, you could have accessed these tools. There was a group that put them up for auction on eBay after they had hacked the CIA. And so the misdirect of the hacking tools that would lead you to believe that it was Russian intelligence because of the markers APT 28 and 29, that's not proof. That's interesting information. It may be evidence, but it's not conclusive. And
right, not without additional information that would show that Russia exclusively, or the Russian government exclusively, had control of those tools.
Yeah, George.
And we know that the CIA has lost control of its own hacking tools.
That's right. George, is anything else you want to comment on?
No, that was the topic that motivated me to call you this evening.
All right, nice to hear from you in Den Haag.
Likewise, Peter.
Okay,
good night.
Bye-bye. That's very interesting. George is an expat living in the Netherlands. I'm delighted to hear from him. And let me see if I can find this other comment that I saw from Ford. Oh, it's hard to do this while I'm behind the mic here, but I do appreciate the comments people post on Facebook, and I do read them after the show. You're welcome to call in with a comment on the issues we've mentioned so far or anything else at 415-455-0102. Now we turn to the mysteries of the Middle East. You may know that the new empowered crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, is at the center of a purge of his purported opponents inside the Saudi royal family. He is also leading a crackdown on what he calls corruption, but it appears to be a consolidation of power. And in the same time frame, last weekend, the Prime Minister of Lebanon flew to Saudi Arabia, where he holds dual citizenship. His name is Saad Hariri. And he went on Saudi TV and announced his resignation as the Prime Minister of Lebanon. And so this has led to some very serious speculation and wild rumors that show tensions increasing and lead to speculation about the risk of war against Hezbollah, which would once again make Lebanon a war zone. So as of today, Hariri remains stranded in Saudi Arabia. That's the term used by the New York Times regional reporter there, Ann Bernard. She said the Iranian-backed militia Hezbollah said the Saudis were holding him against his will, while the Saudis have said there was a plot to assassinate him. No further details on that. But it's really interesting because there was also, of course, a missile that was launched from Yemen. Oh, thanks, Jason. Eric Schmidt was the CEO of Google I was trying to think of there. I appreciate that. That's the benefit of this Facebook thing. People can help me out. At any rate, the launch of the missile from Yemen is treated as an act of war by the Saudis, and they're blaming Iran for supplying that missile or rocket. It's been described variously, and I don't have any proof of either claim, but it is in dispute. We also know that our own Crown Prince, Jared Kushner, was in Saudi Arabia partying late night till 4 o'clock in the morning, we're told, with MBS, and that Trump has signaled his approval of the purge that's underway in Riyadh right now. So Hassan Nasrallah, who is the leader of Hezbollah, at Friday services today, said that Saudi Arabia has asked Israel to attack Lebanon after essentially kidnapping Hariri. I'm not talking here about analysis, he said, but information. The Saudis asked Israel to attack Lebanon. Also on Friday, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, left Saudi Arabia after a brief last-minute meeting with Crown Prince MBS. And in Dubai, where they're opening a Louvre museum, Macron said he doesn't share Saudi Arabia's very harsh opinions of Iran. But it's clear that the U.S. is colluding with Israel and with Saudi Arabia to launch some sort of effort to rein in the Iranians, and I think that will involve a military exchange, and that is deeply troubling that the U.S. would open up a new front in the Middle East after the lessons that we should have learned. Meanwhile, the Times is also reporting today that Saudi Arabia ordered its citizens to depart from Lebanon on Thursday. They haven't said exactly why, but this is a ratcheting up of tensions that we need to watch carefully and see where it all leads. And one more from that region, then I'll take your phone call. The other problem is that as a result of this rocket or missile launch from Yemen, Saudi Arabia enacted a complete blockade, air, land, and sea of Yemen, where 7 million people are on the verge of starvation. Now, we understand that they have loosened the restrictions and some food is being permitted into Yemeni ports. But this occurs at the same time that the world is turning a blind eye to the plight of the Rohingya people who've been ejected brutally from Myanmar and are holed up in refugee camps in Bangladesh. These are very serious problems around the world, and most of them don't get addressed because, hey, Trump might tweet, right? We got to keep bandwidth for that. Good afternoon. You're on the Peter B. Collins podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Peter. It's Kyle Hentz calling. How are you?
Hey, Kyle. Nice to hear from you. How's it going?
Things are good.
Are you in Newport and moving sailboats still?
I'm done for the season. I am actually visiting my brother and his family down in Westerly, which is about 40 minutes from Newport.
Ah, okay. What's on your mind today, Kyle?
Well, I saw that there was a mention of the former NSA, I think he was number 4 there, Binney's meeting with Pompeo, the head of the CIA, and I'm interested in talking about the alleged hack or the leak, which evidence seemed to suggest it was a leak of the emails, and the sort of war back and forth between those who are putting this on the Russians and those who are saying, no, this is something that happened, it was an inside job, if you will.
Right.
My interest has been piqued recently because I just came across an article, a piece by Jason Leopold, who's kind of been leading some investigations by virtue of successful FOIA requests and reporting on the documents he's found. And he has done a story this past week, I don't know what day it came out, about with a source inside of CrowdStrike, which is this firm that basically handled security for the DNC servers.
Right.
They also are a client of the FBI. And in it, this young CrowdStrike source it says that, they tracked it, they chased it down, and it came, the leak, the hack came from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And this runs, of course, completely counter to what Binney and a slew of cybersecurity experts that were a part of Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity and their report.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to talk about that. I actually called today on my way down here. I called Ray McGovern, who is a longtime member of the IPS, and asked him about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, I learned some things from Ray, sort of the inside scoop, but I also wanted to convey to him that Jason Leopold got into a lot of trouble and really hurt his career as a journalist when he reported that Karl Rove was about to get indicted for outing Valerie Plame,
Indeed,
the CIA agent that was involved in nuclear security around the globe, and she was revealed as a, what do they call it?
covert. She was a covert agent, and they outed her.
And Jason Leopold, I was in the room. He was having a conversation by phone with Larissa Alexandrovna, who used to report for Raw Story.
Right.
That, hey, there's about to be an indictment of Rove. And he reported it. Larissa did not report it out for Raw Story, and he got in hot water because it never happened.
It's true.
And here he is now with this scoop that somehow all these months, the folks at CrowdStrike or this source has been quiet. And all of a sudden, it comes out. Oh, they have the proof. And I'm just not buying it. So just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Well, I have to say that I was a participant in Jason's reporting about the Karl Rove indictments that never were unsealed. He described them as sealed, and it is possible that he was able to prove that. He did have to take down the story. And that is the only case in my lengthy association with Jason that I was deeply troubled about until this story at BuzzFeed this week. And
me too.
The profile of Johnston, the way it was written, it's an interesting piece, but it lacks context, it lacks balance, it doesn't even acknowledge Binney's theory. I wish that he had asked Johnston about Binney's arguments so that we could really hear what CrowdStrike, what their talking points are, if not, any real evidence that they developed. But, it was unfortunately too similar to the crap that populates BuzzFeed, a bunch of listicles about the Kardashians and, 20 ways to thin your thighs in 20 minutes.
This was on BuzzFeed. I didn't remember the source.
Yeah, he moved over to BuzzFeed at the beginning of this year, and they've given him, a lot of latitude to do investigations in his FOIA reporting. So yes, I share your concerns about that story. I contacted Jason earlier today, haven't heard back yet, but I've asked him to give me a time when we can do an interview, and I'm going to honestly share these concerns with him and see what he has to say.
Well, good. Well, it seems like you and I are on the same wavelength because I've been, pretty quiet and below the radar, in these matters for years now, and but taking more of an interest now, and I've actually reached out to him to because I want to talk to him too.
Yeah.
Because I had some contact with him those years ago, and this is really unsettling because it's having a ripple effect. It could potentially lead to censorship and people like yourselves who even mention certain things could get flagged and then censored.
Well, this is already going on, Kyle. The fake news filters at Google have hammered Chris Hedges, for example. He went public and showed how 3 weeks ago, if you Googled Chris Hedges, you'd get something like 80,000 responses. And he recently did it, and there were only 6. And, Chris Hedges is a very credible, outspoken man, and he deserves to be heard and read, even if you don't agree with him. But the World Socialist website has seen its Google search traffic drop by 70%. Alternet has sounded the alarm of similar drops in its traffic, and this is all under the guise that they're going to protect us from fake news when the official organs of the state, they're not state-owned media, but they are the official organs, the Post and the Times, are busy promoting this cockamamie conspiracy theory that doesn't have any public evidence. And they really should stop treating it as proven when they haven't proven it, and yet the articles continue to just assert, Russia hacked, and anybody who doesn't believe it needs to get off the bus right now.
Yeah, I was sure that the report that Binney and the VIPS people did was going to cause, have a ripple effect and and cause people to sort of wake up, but it really hasn't happened. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, maybe we can hope that now that Pompeo has had the meeting with Binney and presumably has reported back to the president what he learned, maybe we'll see some kind of foray by the president, or maybe Pompeo has been completely underserved, which is what I was talking to Ray about. By his own people who are part of this sort of deep state battle that's going on to try to pin all this stuff on Russia.
Yeah.
Maybe I wonder what Pompeo's going to do. I mean,
well, I'm not sure. He's a Koch brothers tool and an unreliable partisan in the job of CIA director. So I don't really have a lot of confidence there. And Kyle, I'll just wrap up with you by saying that Bill Binney told me that he has not been contacted by anybody from the special counsel's office. So if they are serious about exposing the truth about the Trump-Russia narrative, they, like the corporate media, are blacking out the commentary and the theorem from Bill Binney. And I can only deduce that they are determined to protect their investment in this evidence-free narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Kyle, thanks a lot for calling. Great to hear from you.
It's good talking with you. Thanks so much.
You bet. Kyle Hentz and I connected way back. He supported the families, the 9/11 widows, the so-called Jersey girls, and has been an advocate for revealing the truth quite consistently, I would say. If you'd like to call in, there's time for a couple of more calls here before we wrap up at the top of the hour. 415-455-0102. 415-455-0102. This week was also the week that we saw the release of the Paradise Papers. They show that the Queen of England has invested in a Cayman Islands fund. Some went to a retailer accused of exploiting poor families. Trump's cabinet members, including Wilbur Ross, are knee-deep in this. Twitter and Facebook received hundreds of millions of dollars in investments that can be traced back to Russian state financial institutions laundered through offshore entities. Offshore cash used to investigate Hillary Clinton's foundation was paid for, or actually the cash came from, a foundation run by the right-wing Mercer family who gave Steve Bannon $6 million to promote the attacks on Hillary Clinton. So this offshore wealth is a serious problem, and the tax reform that's underway in Washington right now so far is not addressing it. And Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, has an op-ed in today's Guardian. I've linked to it in the show file for the podcast, and he describes how this Appleby law firm helps wealthy people hide their wealth and protect it from taxation, and how Apple moved its offshore profits to the Isle of Jersey because they were running out of tax evasion techniques in Ireland. And he says we must start by enacting tax policy that makes it harder for corporate Goliaths and the ultra-wealthy to dodge taxes by sending jobs and assets overseas. Now, I certainly support his goals, but I don't see how this Republican Congress and Senate, as they're rushing to ram through a tax reform package that most of them have never even read. Maybe they will by the time they vote on it, but, we barely know the elements of the so-called reform package. And what we do know is that it will not, I'm willing to bet on this, it will not substantially affect the way the ultra-wealthy and corporations can evade American taxes and hide their money offshore. Good afternoon. You're on the Peter B. Collins podcast.
Hi, Peter. This is another Kyle, the Kyle in Southern California.
Yeah, Kyle. It's a Kyle day here, double Kyles.
It sure seems like it. I wanted to back up what the other Kyle had expressed in concerns about Jason Leopold. Without going into it into too great a detail, I'll just say that Jason Leopold has been a hero of mine for a long, long time. For those who don't know who he is or may not know much about him, he's been identified by the government as a, quote, FOIA terrorist, Freedom of Information Act terrorist, because he is so incredibly effective at digging dirt out of the government, their own dirt, and making them show their own documents. So to see this bizarre article that you mentioned, or that Kyle mentioned, actually, the thing on BuzzFeed.
Right.
I mean, this is very odd. It not only supposedly confirms the Russia hacked narrative. It's demonstrably lacking in any kind of real proof. If you read the article carefully, as I'm sure you have, all it says is that, the Russians hacked, and that's it. There's not really any proof. This guy says that they hacked, That's basically the content of the article, unless I'm mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There are a couple of modest qualifiers, about the Trump-Russia narrative, but the frame of the article is that that's all true, and here's the guy who proved it.
Right, but where's the proof? They don't actually give any proof. To me, this is very concerning. To have somebody who I've considered to be, in the top echelon of trustworthiness suddenly produce essentially garbage.
Well, and let's.
I'm friends with Jason on Facebook, and I questioned it. He has not responded, much to my chagrin. He often responds to me directly if I have some question for him. So I don't know are you friends with him on Facebook?
Yes.
Obviously, Facebook is not the most secure place to discuss these things.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to him privately to invite him to come on the show and talk about this.
You mentioned that, and that's great. I mean, maybe that will clear the air here. But as far as Binney goes, Binney is one of a relative handful of, trustworthy whistleblowers who I place in the rank above hero. Whistleblowing truth tellers who, without these people, we wouldn't know anything. I'm tempted to start cursing, frankly. It's
Well, you're allowed to. I'm not going to censor you.
Well, I don't want to go there, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah.
Binney is I mean, he's an amazing source, and he's tremendously brave. So anybody like that, and as I say, there's really not very many in his class, deserves to be respected and honored. There really should be statues of him and a few other people put up.
Well, that may be a little excessive, but he certainly should not be the subject of yellow journalism and smears that, dump on him because he appeared on RT or Alex Jones or Fox News. He's willing to appear on MSNBC. He's willing to take Rachel Maddow on directly, but she will not permit it. She uses the Rush Limbaugh tactic where she commits character assassination with the subject in absentia. And, for example, when she introduced the segment about Bill Binney, she said he worked at the NSA, but never really, offered his true credentials, that he was the top technical officer. He knows where these intercepts are placed at the different nodes and switches around the nation and around the world. And that's why he can say with confidence that if this were a hack, the NSA has proof, but they're not providing it. And that's why he believes the intelligence community is part of some sort of an effort to lie to the American people and promote this false narrative. And again, it simply deserves fair evaluation. And if Rachel Maddow were practicing journalism, she would evaluate what he says. She'd invite him on. She can bring in any other expert who supports, her narrative, and they can have at it. But that's not what we're getting. We are getting one side of the story promoted as fact without evidence. And that's where I draw the line, and that's where I call out Rachel Maddow. And by the way, Rachel, if you want to talk to me, I'd be happy to come on your show and make the case on Bill Binney's behalf.
Rachel's too busy making $40,000 a show or whatever it is. So then the next step is, when you think about it a little further, even if, and it's a big, huge if, but even if you can prove that the Russians were the ones that hacked the DNC emails, so effing what? It's the content of the email that we should be discussing, for crying out loud. When you look at those content, that's the stuff that's important.
Well,
it's
Kyle,
not how we got the information.
Kyle, I think we're going to have to send you to a re-education camp, because you're guilty of thinking critically and rationally and refusing to be distracted by the shiny object right over here.
Well, that's right. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to leave her highly coveted position of chairman of the DNC and hostess of the convention itself on the eve of the convention because of these leaks. And I'm going to call them leaks.
And they did show that while Hillary was Secretary of State, people who donated to the Clinton Foundation got favorable treatment, got access to Hillary. And the most damaging file that I read was a memo by Doug Band, who was running the Clinton Foundation and his own lobby shop on the side. Huma Abedin was on the payroll of the State Department, the lobby shop, and the Clinton Foundation simultaneously. And Doug Band wrote a memo about how he was going to make sure that Bill Clinton earned $60 million while Hillary was president. All right? And we're not supposed to look at that because Russia. Kyle, I got to wrap up here. Thanks for your call today, okay?
Thank you, as always.
All right, good to hear from you. Just a couple of quick items here before I go. As you know, the Harvey Weinstein infused pattern, this wave of reports of sexual harassment, has gone in many interesting directions. We reported on Roy Moore, the Senate candidate and Bible thumper from Alabama, who has been accused by the Washington Post of trying to date, and in one case, inappropriate sexual behavior, not intercourse, with a 14-year-old girl. I suspect Karl Rove behind this, as I detailed in yesterday's podcast. But in reaction to these revelations, Trump and Mitch McConnell and many Republicans say, well, the president believes we cannot allow a mere allegation from this one from many years ago to destroy a person's life. However, the president also believes that if these allegations are true, Judge Moore will do the right thing and step aside. And Paul Waldman, who is a reliable Democratic partisan, and he op-eds at the Washington Post, his column is worth reading today because he points out that it is Trump who has lowered the standards and forced Republicans to go silent in the face of his own charges of groping and sexual harassment, if not encounters with underage girls. And so he says the leaders of the Republican Party are taking a very specific, carefully crafted position, which says that the behavior described is unacceptable, and if they are true, then Moore should step aside, and that this is part of a pattern that has led to a kind of lack of any critical judgment by leaders of the Republican Party. Jackie Speer, the courageous congresswoman from the San Francisco Bay Area, a Democrat, has pressed, and yesterday, shortly after Roy Moore was exposed by the Washington Post, the Senate approved a resolution requiring all senators and all staffers to undergo anti-sexual harassment training. Then there's the allegation by a gay journalist against Jan Wenner, the founder of Rolling Stone, and a guy I've never really respected. Apparently, in 2005, Ben Ryan went to Wenner's townhouse where Wenner made a pass at him, and when he rebuffed that maneuver, that Jan Wenner said, hey, Stay, and I'll give you a writing contract. He offered to trade work for sex. And we're hearing an apology from Louis C.K., who acknowledges that the claims by 5 different women published in the New York Times yesterday are true. And he says, there's nothing about this that I forgive myself for. I have nothing. I have to reconcile it with who I am, which is nothing compared to the task that I left my victims. I've spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen. And then there is the revelation by the Diocese of Brooklyn that 25 years ago, Jaime Lara, who was a priest named James Lara at the time, was booted out of the priesthood after being accused of sexually abusing children, pedophilia. Well, the church helped keep his secret for 25 years, but yesterday they posted his name on a website, and he has been asked to and agreed to resign from his current position at Arizona State University. And I want to share this with you because it was posted on Facebook the other day by a man who I have had a lot of respect for. He is a Harvard-trained psychologist. And he wrote this: Trump has been in office for a year, and I have spent some time thinking about how my life has changed. Okay, I'm not at risk of deportation or having my right to abortion challenged, and we haven't gone full nuclear against the North Koreans yet. I found amusement in the ignorance of Trump's tweets, his total and complete narcissism, his circus-like act of a cabinet and family. But here is what has changed for me. I've learned about hate. Not just the hate his followers have for the educated or the immigrants or the poor in general, but my hate. My anger at those who just couldn't find a difference between Hillary and Trump. For those who thought a protest vote for Jill Stein would send a message. For those who got their facts and information from bizarre online posts looking at you, Facebook. I'm looking at you folks who couldn't see the difference between a profound character pathology and a benign lack of charisma. Now, excuse me, but Hillary's only defect was a benign lack of charisma? He continues, you sat on your asses out of principle or indifference or ignorance, and you left us in the clutches of a truly malignant man. Thanks. Just know that I hate you. Now, I really find this contemptible and beneath those of us who call ourselves liberals or progressives. And in the show file for today's podcast, I've linked to a new video that's just been released by Nashville filmmaker David Earnhardt. He went to Shelbyville recently, where a protest was staged by about 150 people who identify with the Klan and other white supremacist groups. And his film depicts how Shelbyville says no. There were more than 750 counter-protesters, and I think David Earnhardt did a great job of capturing their response to virulent hate. I hope you'll check it out. Thanks for listening to my news and comment podcast today. Thanks for all those phone calls. And I remain Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling.